Rogue One was infamously surrounded by fierce controversy facing its theatrical release, from news of extensive reshoots that almost always sign the death certificate for any big movie, to reports that the late Peter Cushing will be recreated using CGI to reprise his role as Grand Moff Tarkin, with many even claiming that there was no need for a story centred around one line in the opening crawl of A New Hope. This was Disney's first chance at exploring a Star Wars movie in the wider universe, not beholden to the main Skywalker story. Many say that they failed with Rogue One. However, many said it was the best Star Wars movie yet. But that's the thing. Rogue One isn't a Star Wars movie. It's a Star Wars story, and so it was held to different standards. This allowed Gareth Edwards to take a darker approach to the Star Wars universe, and for better or for worse, he created the first Star Wars story movie. The classic elements of a Star Wars movie are present in the plot. In one simplified sentence, it describes the plot: a band of misfits go on an adventure in order to help the Rebel Alliance fight against the Empire. However, what allows Rogue One to be darker than any other Star Wars movie, and what sets Rogue One aside from the Skywalker saga, or even Solo? Most of the themes in the Star Wars movies are not heavily explored, and are often a backdrop to the plot or to the characters. The only main Star Wars movie that could be argued to be theme heavy is The Last Jedi, yet even the themes in that movie play second fiddle to the story. This is not the case with Rogue One, with the theme being the driving force of the narrative, and each character is represented by the theme in some way. In the original trilogy, we get a simplified view of the Galactic Civil War. The rebels are the good guys and the Empire are evil space Nazis. From the first introduction to the two warring sides, we see this, with the set of the rebel ship being a bright white, inferring to the audience that this side is morally good, while the set of the Empire's base is dark, cramped and gloomy, inferring that this side is at the opposite end of that spectrum. War is not that simple, and this is where Rogue One shines at exploring the theme of rebellion. The predominant theme in this movie is that of rebellion. We see three main types of rebellion in this movie, and each of their approaches to fighting the Empire vary, some blurring the lines of morality. We really get a cross-examination of the Rebel Alliance, and get a view of its inner workings, and how there are so many different views on how to rebel. The first type of rebel that we get to know is Saw Gerrera, a battle-hardened veteran of the Clone Wars, described as a terrorist and disowned by the rebellion for going too far and tarnishing its reputation for freedom fighting. We see how brutal his men are, and how he tortures the Imperial pilot Bodhi for information. Gerrera's robotic life support system is also reminiscent of Vader's, again subtly associating him with brutality. However, we also get to see Saw's heart, and how he raised Jyn as one of his own. This shows that he is fighting for something, rather than fighting for the sake of it. He has seen how his home planet of Onderon was terrorised by the Separatists, and now he sees the whole galaxy submitting to the will of the Empire, and he cannot stand for it. Saw represents extremism in rebellion. In his mind, the goal far outweighs the means. The other form of rebellion we see is that of Jyn's form, which is inspired by her father, Galen Erso. Galen's form of rebellion, like Saw's, is also motivated in part by love for Jyn. However, he rebels through the use of sabotage. Although never being part of the Rebel Alliance, Galen left the Death Star project in rebellion to the construction of such a weapon of mass destruction. When director Krennic hunted him down, abstinence from work was no longer an option, so he joined the project, but instilled a fatal flaw allowing the rebellion to destroy this weapon of mass destruction. The flaw was so insignificant that the Empire couldn't detect it. Galen represents the hopes of rebellion, trying to defeat evil despite the odds. Jyn learns to embody this hope and carries it throughout the rebellion in the final act, being the main motivation for the rebellion to steal the plans of the Death Star. The final form of rebellion that we see is that of the Rebel Council, consisting of Mon Mothma, Bail Organa and many others. They order the assassination of Galen Erso in an attempt to provide protection for the whole galaxy by killing the man that leads the project in charge of constructing the Death Star. We see that they are willing to commit murder to prevent the potential murder of billions. This is a far cry from the rebellion that is presented in the original trilogy. This is a calculating force that is fighting for what they believe is right. However, What defines the Alliance is their insistence on democracy and teamwork, their justification that they are on the right side, and what sets them apart from what they view as terrorism in Saw Gerrera. When parts of the Council refuse to attack Scarif in the closing parts of the second act, the Council determine that they cannot act, due to it being too risky without the full Council's consent. However, the thing that defines them also holds them back. They fail to do the right thing and support Jin's mission on Scarif to retrieve the Death Star plans. When word reaches the rebellion of the assault on Scarif, some of the members that had originally disagreed to the plan go to Scarif without telling the rest of the Council, and before long the whole Rebel Alliance is supporting Rogue One on Scarif. The Alliance learn from their insistence on democracy that it opposes their aim to rebellion at times, and learn that sometimes in order to do the right thing they must leave diplomacy behind. All three forms of rebellion collide in the final act and are represented in Jin's crew, named Rogue One. Cassian and the rest of the rebels are a representation of Gerrera's extreme form of rebellion, telling Jin that they've all done terrible things in the name of the Alliance: sabotage, theft and murder. The fact that they all come together and agree secretly to infiltrate Scarif also harkens to the Council's democracy and insistence upon teamwork. Jin represents the hope that sparks rebellion that her father instilled in her when he died. When they land on Scarif and the troops are afraid of failure and death, it is she that inspires them to do what is right, in hopes of defeating the Empire. We learn that there is many forms of rebellion, and all blur the lines of morality, yet each form has its place in the fight for good against evil. Obviously, realism does not go hand in hand with the Star Wars universe. What I mean by this is a realistic approach to conflict and war in the confines of Star Wars. The decision to not have any Jedi was a controversial one. One of the staples of Star Wars was lightsabers and the struggle between the Jedi and the Sith, and many people wrote off Rogue One immediately for omitting them from the story. However, director Gareth Edwards wanted to make a gritty war movie about the rebellion. That meant that the movie could not surround the shenanigans of the Force, yet it still plays its part in the character of Cheryl, yet he is no major action piece in the movie where the Force saves the day. You might be thinking though, Vader plays a role in the movie. We'll get to that. In order to have some form of realism, the Empire has to seem like the massive threat that it is, and that is where the movie really succeeds. I've never really been that afraid of the Empire from the original trilogy. Their stormtroopers seem incompetent, and the rebellion always manages to escape or defeat them. In this movie, that isn't the case. The Empire is a real threat, and the stormtroopers actually kill some of the good guys too, which is a rarity in the Star Wars universe. I mean, like, look at this shot of TIE fighters. The Empire is also fleshed out a lot, and yet to see how they control and dominate the whole galaxy. I know that a lot of people think that the plan that happened in the first act is jarring, and it is, but it really sells the fact that the Empire are a force for evil across the galaxy. I mean, Jin is being shipped off to a labour camp in the first act. That's some serious Holocaust illusions right there. I kind of wish that the rebellion had have freed her from the camp so we get to see the camp and how brutally people are treated by the Empire, but we still get the same idea in this movie. Also, the good guys almost lose in this story, and in some ways do. The final battle is so intense, and the rebellion suffers major losses at the Battle of Scarif, just narrowly escaping with the Death Star plans. Despite the fact that you know they will eventually succeed in their goal, the movie succeeds in creating great tension. You really buy that this mission cost the rebellion almost everything. You see how many ships get destroyed, and their forces are severely depleted. Krennic was also a great villain, despite being the middleman of the Empire in this movie. It's obvious that he has so little value for human life, and you can tell that he knows that the Empire's message for protecting the galaxy is absolute bullshit. He makes this claim really sarcastically to Galen in the first scene, and he's willing to build a weapon of mass destruction just to move up the ranks in this organisation. It's also cool that we get to see more faces of significance in the Empire. Previously we've only had Vader, the Emperor and Tarkin as real characters on the side of the Empire, and it was really cool to see the dynamic between them and those that they command. This approach to warfare in the Star Wars movies was refreshing and is arguably the greatest depiction of the fight against the Empire in the original trilogy. Unlike other Star Wars movies, we also get to see the protagonist struggle with morality. Star Wars is known for its fierce optimism and stance on morality, and as a result the main characters do not often struggle with moral dilemmas. The best example of this is probably the most interesting character in the movie, Cassian Andor. In the introduction to this character, we learn that he is an Alliance operative, gaining information from an informant. When they are threatened by being captured by Imperial forces, Cassian assures the informant that everything will be grand, before shooting him in the back and climbing away to make his escape. We see a man that believes so much in his cause that he's willing to shoot a man in the back. We see throughout the course of the movie that he struggles with doing what he's ordered to do, and doing what is right. This culminates in deciding not to assassinate Galen Erso against orders, as he thought it was wrong. The consequence of Cassian learning this lesson allows him to disobey orders in the third act and help Jyn in her assault on Scarif, where he ends up giving his own life for the cause that he believed in. His character is so interesting, as in the past he wouldn't have thought twice about assassinating Galen, and a struggle with morality is something that exists in every war situation. Let's hope that his Disney Plus show also succeeds in portraying this brilliant characterization of Cassian Andor. Jyn also has a shift in her morals throughout the course of the story, being separated from her father at such a young age and forced to fend for herself since Saw abandoned her, leaves her uncaring for the greater good of the galaxy. The line that best represents this mentality is when Saw questions her on her apathy to the fact that the Empire flag reigns over the galaxy, to which she replies,
"It's not a problem if you don't look up."
In other words, the world has not treated her well. Why should she care what happens to it? It's refreshing to see a character so uncaring of the conflict in the story and dragged in by external forces. In A New Hope, it is clear that Luke has little love for the Empire and is left with no other option but to leave Tatooine with Obi-Wan after the death of his family and begin to fight the Empire. In comparison, Jyn is captured by the rebellion as she might be some use to their plans. She only starts to believe in their cause and fight for their mission when her father's plan is revealed to her. A man she believed to be dead, the most important person in her childhood, and who no doubt influenced her greatly. Once she finds out that he is alive, her main priority is finding him and saving him. She does this by convincing the rebels that he has made a weakness in the Death Star and is useful for the rebellion. She tries her best to save him, and even after he is killed indirectly by the rebellion, she determines to carry on his plan and try and complete her father's mission. She goes from being a person that couldn't care less about the galaxy to wanting to save it, all because of her father and her strong connection to him. The fact that the characters in this story are a far cry from the heroes that we see in most Star Wars movies allows there to be an exploration of morality and perspective that the main movies do not allow. You would find it hard to find someone to argue that the ending of Rogue One isn't the best part of the whole movie. From the beautiful cinematography of Scarif contrasting with the explosions, fire and death on such a beautiful planet, to the intense space battle between the rebellion and the Empire, to the amazing tension and teamwork displayed by the ragtag team that is Rogue One. And that's without even talking about the last couple of minutes. I can safely say that the ending of Rogue One is my favourite ending of any Star Wars movie. We get to see this ragtag team come together throughout the movie, mostly because of circumstance, and unite to achieve a common goal. Each character has a role to play in the final act. The rebellion forces mustered by Cassian, supported by Chirrut and Baz, created a diversion so that K2, Jyn and Cassian can infiltrate the base to steal the plans, while Bodhi mines the ship. Once the fleet arrives and the shield goes back up, they determine that they must transmit the plans to the Alliance. The characters know at this point their chances of survival and escape are low, yet they persevere all the same. Bodhi attempts to contact the fleet to take down the planetary shield, while K2, Jyn and Cassian steal the plans. We get shots of the battle intensifying, while we see these characters attempting to complete their tasks, and this helps build up the pace and tension of the battle. The assault on Scarif doesn't last long, however, and the tide soon turns to the Empire. The first character that perishes is K2SO, as he sacrifices his life to seal the vault protecting Jin and Cassian. This is the first hint that things will take a turn for the darker, and maybe the characters that we have grown to love won't make it out in the end. The next character to die is Chirrut, after he manages to pull the Master Switch, allowing Bodhi to contact the rebellion. He dies in the arms of Bose, his dearest friend, while giving him solace that he will always be with the Force. The next to perish is Bodhi, just after informing the rebellion of their status, and ordering them to destroy the shield to allow the plans to be transmitted. Baz then takes on the Death Commanders that killed his friend, following in his footsteps by chanting the words that give Chirrut such power, before he too succumbs to death, while looking at his friend lying on the battlefield. Jin finally makes it to the top of the tower with the plans, while the rebellion succeed in destroying the shield gate. She finally gets to confront the man that killed her mother and stole her father. She is saved by Cassian as the plans begin to transmit to the rebellion fleet, making all of their sacrifice worth it as they create hope for the galaxy. Despite the fact that our two remaining characters know that death is certain, they share a moment of joy and satisfaction as they achieve their noble mission. They stumble to the beach as the Death Star looms in the sky, and accept their fate as the beautiful planet around them is destroyed by the weapon they have fought so hard to stop. These characters are not iconic Star Wars characters, yet seeing them achieve their goal is so satisfying, as they do it with no hope of survival. Each character plays their part in so many ways in this single mission. This is why the end of the journey is so adored by so many. These characters will give everything to save the galaxy, but yet receive nothing in return. They don't even know if the plans will escape and if the Death Star will eventually be destroyed, yet they find solace in knowing that they have done everything possible to ensure that this does happen. The reasons that their deaths have such an effect is that they are all on the same journey throughout the movie. Each character plays an integral part to the final conflict, and no one is neglected. The final shot of Jin and Cassian is tragic, and unlike any other Star Wars movie, the main characters' stories end in tragedy. This is what makes Rogue One unique amongst Star Wars movies. We then get treated to the epilogue, bridging the gap between Rogue One and A New Hope, where the dark tone is continued. We get the tense, claustrophobic scene of nameless rebel soldiers desperately trying to transport the plans before Vader arrives out of the dark. We see him cut through this hallway of soldiers like they are nothing, while one frantically tries to escape. The soldier now carrying the plans barely escapes the grip of Vader, as the ship detaches from the cruiser and escapes from the Empire's grasp. The film ends on a lighter note, as the story of Rogue One is now over and A New Hope has begun. Rogue One isn't perfect and has many flaws, especially in the first two acts. Despite this, it's the best attempt to make a Star Wars movie dark, and it definitely succeeds at that. I had great hopes for the spin-off movies, as they let creators experiment in the Star Wars universe, yet, since Solo, these movies seem to be gone for good. Let's hope that whatever Disney decides to do with Star Wars now that their trilogy is over, that we get to see another dark Star Wars movie.